We're live now, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Bore da on this very cold morning in Wales and in the UK. Welcome to the 21st of November meeting of Powys County Council Governance and Audit Committee. Welcome to all committee members, officers and other county councillors who are kindly joining us today. Carrie-Anne, item 1, could you advise us of any apologies we have for the meeting, please?
Yes, Chair. We've got apologies for absence received from Committee Member Gareth Hall, Cabinet Member Councillors Jake Berryman, and from officers Jane Thomas, Dr. Richard Jones, Sharon Frewin, and Paul Bradshaw. And Councillor Chris Walsh has given apologies for having to leave the meeting early.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Carrie-Anne. And I will move to agenda item 2 and ask if there are any disclosures of interest to be made in connection with today's agenda, please. I'll pause. I'm not seeing any hands, so I will assume there are none. We'll move to agenda item 3, the minutes of our meeting of the 23rd of October, and I will take any points of clarification, correction, or any matters arising, please. I can see Councillor Pete Lewington has his hand, so I'll go to Councillor Pete and then Councillor Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's on minute 3, page 6 in the pack, and it relates to the whistleblowing points. I think we did ask for the annual report to be brought forward as soon as possible, rather than waiting until July, because I think the last time we saw it was January 24. The response does say the monitoring officer did agree to bring the figures to committee. And first question is, I just wondered if we had a deadline for that. And then the one below, we don't have a response to that question.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who can take that at this point? Kath.
Chair, if I can just come in, because I know the monitoring officer is struggling to get into the meeting, but I have had a message from him that the whistleblowing report will be coming for, I think it's 24-25, will be coming for, is that the right 23, 24, 24, 25 in January.
Thanks, Kath.
Yeah.
That's extremely helpful, Kath, because we were missing 23-24.
Yes.
And then from July, we'll move on to a July annual cycle for the regular reports. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much. Is that and Pete's other point, could someone pick that up either if not immediately in the meeting, but could that be picked up?
Yes.
Pete, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pete. Councillor Adam and then Gareth Jones from Audit Wales.
Yeah, thank you. Mine's very short. I'm recorded as having given my apologies for the meeting. That's accurate. Can I be removed from the attendance list in minutes?
Thank you, Councillor Adam. I recall you did give apologies for that meeting. And
Chair,
Gareth?
Clive
sorry.
Penny is, sorry, Chair, Clive Penny has just arrived if you wanted to go back to the whistleblowing.
Okay, we will. Clive, welcome.
Chair, members, please forgive me. I've had terrible problems getting in this morning, and thanks to Kath for getting me in at the last minute. So thank you.
Pete, sorry, Clive, Kath has kindly updated us on the intention to bring the 23-24 whistleblowing report to the January meeting, and then we'll move into a regular annual cycle. But Pete had another question.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll probably do the 2 years in one go, I think, because that would be easier.
Okay. That's fine. Pete, what was your other outstanding point?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the other question, Clive, is the one that's in the minutes there, where officers were to check whether an annual review of the policy had been undertaken by committee in the last 12 months, and we don't have a response in there yet.
Gemma's on the call, Councillor Pete, and Gemma's given me an update on that. So, Gemma, are you able to indicate the last time that the policy was made? Because I did make the query on your behalf, Councillor Pete.
Thank you.
Gemma's not responding, Councillor Pete. So during the course of the meeting, I'll get that information and put it in the chat for you.
Lovely. And so I think it was, just to be clear, Clive, it was a review by this committee.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks,
Right.
Chair.
Thank you. And Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 8 of the minutes. It's in relation to the Audit Wales Risk Management Report. As members will recall, there was a query around the management response to recommendation 4. Subsequent to the meeting, we have received an updated response to recommendation 4, which we put into the Council's regulatory tracker, and we can confirm that that does meet our Code of Audit Practice requirements. So there is clarity around the actions and who will take those and where those will be reported to, Chair.
Thank you very much for clarifying that, Gareth. That's extremely helpful. Thank you. Any other points of clarification, correction, matters arising, please? From me, on behalf of Gareth Hall, who unfortunately had to send apologies to this meeting, Gareth has picked up some press coverage around costs of meeting net zero, not in our authority, but in other authorities. So Gareth has asked if this committee could look to ERC committee to work with officers and commission a benchmarking exercise to examine the costs of net zero and enable higher levels of assurance that we understand, or the council understands, the nature of these costs and benchmarks with other similar authorities. If that could be taken forward, that's a matter arising from the deep dive that we conducted last time. Any further comments on the minute? In which case I'll look to committee members for someone to move and second the minute, and then I'll ask for a show of hands, please.
Move.
Okay, so John and Councillor Pete, is the committee content to approve the minute? Content? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you. I'll move us on to Audit Wales items and agenda item 4, and invite Gareth to introduce the Audit Wales Q1 report. Gareth.
Thank you very much, members. This is on page 17 onwards of your papers. Just to be clear with members and also members of the public, we are now providing these updates twice yearly, so there'll be another update which will be dated the end of December, and as this one was dated the end of January, I just wanted to very briefly give you an update as to where some of the actions have moved on. As you'll be aware, the last meeting of the committee in October 2025 received the council's audit of statement of accounts for 24-25 and also the pension fund. In terms of the grant returns, which are noted on page 18, we have 2 claims outstanding which have been worked through by the team and the Paris team, which is the pool budget funding for nursing care and also ICT. And in terms of the 24-25 grants, work is ongoing around those, so we will report in due course around those. In terms of our performance audit work, our unscheduled care review, that is yet to be finalised for clearance, so that is ongoing. You received the scrutiny report in July 2025, and any of the reports that we've received will be removed from further future updates. Commissioning report was also received in July 25. We have now submitted our report on the corporate governance to the Council for Factual Accuracy Clearance, and that process is ongoing. So we will be liaising with the clerking team around when we can bring that forward to the committee. We'll be gathering our evidence around the staffing resources and pressures in local government, which is recruitment and retention, in January, February. The planning review and the corporate safeguarding review you've received, and you received the risk management report at the last meeting of the committee. And in terms of the 25-26 work, we are doing that work on recruitment and retention early in the new year. We are currently evidence gathering around the cybersecurity, and we are planning to gather our evidence around economic development in spring 2026. On the national reports, which are on the next page, temporary accommodation is the next item on this agenda, Chair. The capital planning report will be published in December, so next month. And we did undertake some local interviews in Powys County Council to inform that national review. We're underway on our work on children's services. So we interviewed the head of children's services in Powys alongside all the other heads of children's services this month. And we have this week published our project brief on local government funding arrangements, which I know is of interest to members of the committee. I'll pause and take any questions from members of the committee.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Thank you. I can see Councillor Peate's hand. Councillor Peate.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Gareth. Just a quick one back on the grants.
Yep.
I just wondered, like the 23-24 one is sort of 18 months past that year end date now. Is the reason, is it just because you can't finish off those two outstanding claims? And then I just wondered, does that have any impact on the accounts?
I will clarify with my colleague Emma Woodcock, who leads our audit of accounts work. So I wouldn't want to give you an incorrect answer, Councillor Peter, and I'll get that back to you. But I understand it would not. Sorry. Yeah.
I've managed to come on the call, so I cannot. Hiya. Sorry. Hi, everyone. Just to let you know, we've received the information from the council. We just need to work through it ourselves. But obviously, from a accounts perspective, the grants themselves aren't material to the accounts, so we're perfectly happy with signing off the accounts, but we just need to confirm some details. So what we're going to do is, obviously, because we've got the 24-25 pool budgets to do as well, we're going to be checking those alongside, checking the ones outstanding alongside those, and we're hoping to finish them both together during this year. So it's all okay in terms of the accounts opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Thanks for that clarification. Thanks, Councillor Peate, for the question. Councillor Chris.
Yes, I want to turn to page 25 of the report. It's under the Cur Inspectorate Wales reports that were due to come out, and I'm just checking, has the Joint Inspectorate Review of Child Protection Arrangements, which was scheduled for March 25, been published?
Sorry, Councillor Chris, I will check that and come back to you, but that relates to Pembrokeshire County Council, so that is not specific to Powys County Council, so that would be available on the CIW website, yeah. But I will check that and pass a note over to the clerking team.
I understand that, but for me, it's about lessons learned, and it's just a crossover with what has happened on there. So I just wondered why that was. Thank you.
Thank you for the query.
Thanks, Chris, for the question. Thank you, Gareth, for offering to chase that up and clarify. Thank you. Any further questions for Audit Wales colleagues? If not, I think the committee is content to note the report and thank Audit Wales for their contributions and for updating us. And thank you to Gareth for updating us on progress that have happened since the report was finalised as well, for which we are very grateful.
Chair, just very quickly, just to confirm to Councillor Chris that that report was published in June 2025 and is available on the Care Inspectorate Wales website. So if you wanted to find that, that is publicly available to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you very much. I'll move us on then, colleagues, to agenda item 5, which is Audit Wales report on temporary accommodation. Gareth, if you could briefly introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So for members of the committee and those watching, this is one of Audit Wales's local government national studies. So we draw on a range of evidence across Wales, and we undertake those reviews on Wales-wide topics. So this is not a Powys specific report, but obviously homelessness does affect all council areas in Wales. So it's an important topic and one which is relevant to the work of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to come present our findings. The audit was undertaken to assess whether or not councils are securing value for money and effectively preventing homelessness. And if I just take you through very quickly, as I will know that members will have read the papers, the key messages: demand and cost pressures. Demand for temporary accommodation has increased fivefold in the last decade, driven by factors such as the COVID pandemic, the cost of living crisis, and housing shortages. Across Wales in March 2025, 10,800 people were in temporary accommodation, which is a 200% increase since 2020. And of those, 24% are children. Council spending has surged from 28 million in 2019-20 to 172 million in 2023-24, which is a 516% increase. And that level of expenditure is clearly a very significant challenge to all local authorities. Quality and well-being concerns also come out through the report. Temporary accommodation often does not meet people's needs and can harm both their health and their well-being. And examples include families being placed alongside individuals with addictive addictions, poor living conditions, and restrictive rules that impact both employment and children's development. Weaknesses in the assessment of value for money. Most councils, when we reviewed, could not demonstrate how they would assess value for money, and instead they focus on short-term costs, undertake limited amounts of benchmarking, seldom assess the outcomes that people are achieving. Few councils evaluate a range of options or have robust maintenance plans for their properties that they own, and spot purchasing from providers often lacks cost controls, leaving councils potentially vulnerable to higher prices. And there's been limited progress on prevention. All councils have rapid rehousing transition plans, but the quality of those varies. Many plans lack primary prevention measures, which are most effective. Councils struggle to predict long-term demand and often lack fully costed plans. Workforce pressures are significant, and this is an important finding. For those staff working in this area, there are high sickness rates, recruitment challenges, and limited modelling of future skills needed. Partnership working is inconsistent, leading to gaps and potentially duplication. And there is a risk of a longer-term crisis. Without a shift from firefighting to prevention, councils will continue to provide an expensive service, and as we outlined in the report, that cost is increasing, that doesn't always meet the needs of the people receiving the service. Prevention and collaboration offer the greatest potential for cost savings and improved outcomes. We made 3 recommendations, and as you will see, those focus on value for money. So there's a recommendation relating to councils ensuring that they look at the full range of approaches and options for temporary accommodation and how those are considered, and set out how they will assess and monitor the overall value for money of the provision, including the intended outcomes, and how they will assess the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of the provision. We made a recommendation. The second recommendation looks at planning for prevention, and that sets out that to effectively plan to prevent homelessness, councils should ensure they are making the best use of relevant data, include a range of primary, secondary, and tertiary approaches in their plans, with an emphasis on primary prevention, model the impact of policy changes on the skills and capacity needed in the workforce, identify the workforce that they need to address the demand for temporary accommodation in the future, and then partnership working. We made a recommendation that council should improve this and to work with partners to identify existing roles, respective roles and responsibilities, and agree how to address gaps and duplication in those services, and regularly evaluate the partnership working. In summary, members of the committee, councils face rising demand, escalating costs and risks to financial sustainability. Improving value for money, strengthening prevention, and enhancing partnership working are critical steps that all councils should take to avoid turning a short-term challenge into a long-term crisis. I can confirm to members of the committee that the management response form that has been submitted by the council and developed meets our code of audit practice requirements, which are that the council has properly considered the recommendations and that it has set out specific actions, has set clear and reasonable timescales, and set out who is responsible for the actions. I'll now hand over to the officers who might want to take the committee through the management response form.
Thank you very much, Gareth. That was an extremely helpful and comprehensive introduction. And worth bearing in mind, worth reiterating that this is not a report specific to Powys, but is a broader report. Andy, am I looking to you, Andy Thompson? Am I looking to you for the management response?
Well, actually, Richard Batt's on the.
Is Richard managed to join?
Oh gosh, yeah, I hope so. Is Richard with
Yes,
us?
yes, he is,
Oh, right,
Chair.
okay,
Hi, Richard.
excellent.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Richard because Richard's closer to the ground on this. I
No,
mean,
this is absolutely fine. You're both very, very welcome. It's just that we were aware that Richard might have been struggling to join us, but Richard, it's good that you were able to join us. And if you could walk us through briefly walk us through the management response, and then I'll open it for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and apologies for the confusion in getting into the meeting. What we've done in terms of the response, obviously we've taken the three main headings of value for money, planning for prevention and partnership working, and we put almost a position statement how we are doing against those three key headings. And then we've looked then to get some smart sort of goals in terms of how we're going to take forward the service in terms of further meeting those recommendations. The key aim for us as a service is, as part of our rapid rehousing, is homeless prevention. And you'll see within the management response form, we make reference to a homeless triage pilot, where the intention is to minimise and avoid households having to go through the trauma of homelessness in its entirety. And that's through the homeless triage pilot. And it's to report back to the audit committee. Since the pilot came into being in June, start of June, we're running at about 75% prevention. So when a household approaches us, 3/4 of the time, we're actually preventing that household having to go into temporary accommodation, entering the homeless system. And as referenced in the management response form, there'll be a full evaluation of that triage at the end of this calendar year, with the intention that if we show proof of concept, that we formalise that as a way of working going forward. Also, if I may, in terms of temporary accommodation use, we as a council minimise the use of private rented sector accommodation wherever possible. And as referenced in the sort of response form, we provide temporary accommodation in the main within social housing. And at the moment, about 89% of temporary accommodation provision is within the social housing sector, predominantly our stock, but also partner housing association stock. And wherever possible, we flip that household so that they can stay in that temporary accommodation as a secure contract. Because as part of our rapid rehousing ethos, and that's referenced in the management response form, we don't want to move households twice wherever possible. And then just to finish off in terms of my preamble, Chair, if I may, in partnership working, we do reference the need. I think it was referenced in terms of primary prevention. Of course, it is about partnership working. So through our homeless cell, we are looking to strengthen that in terms of partnership engagement, to work with others to kind of take up service further upstream to avoid the need for homelessness presentation in its entirety. I'll take any questions regarding the response form.
Thank you very much, Richard. What really strikes me from your talking us through the management response is that, well, certainly for me personally, it rather brought to life the text. And when I read the text, it's the text is the text and the actions are the actions. But what I really heard and felt from your introduction was a real compassion and consideration for the community of people who you and your team are endeavouring to support. So that really that had an impact on me, that it really brought the compassion and the heart of the policy to life as you were introducing it, which is much more interesting than reading the actions at one level. But the actions, don't get me wrong, the actions
No, of course, yeah.
and our confidence that the actions and the impacts of those actions are being measured is really, really important. But I'm really pleased to hear the approach and the compassion as well. I'll bring others in. Councillor Peat.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Gareth. Thanks, Richard. And yeah, I'll just echo your comments as well there, Chair, to start with. I guess slightly difficult question, but to just help the understanding, when I think, Gareth, you mentioned the 10,800, which is Wales wide. Do asylum seeking dispersals come into this as well? or are they outside of this temporary homelessness? And then I guess the question with the obvious answer is, if we built more accommodation, we wouldn't have the problem.
Thank you, Pete.
Sorry. Yeah, from a Powys perspective, Councillor Pete, there's no asylum dispersal households in temporary accommodation in any of our stock or private rented stock in that respect. Fully agree that in terms of homelessness who's temporary accommodation, it's within the wider context of a clear mismatch between supply and demand. And if I might just put that into sharper relief, 57% of households on the Common Housing Register require one-bedroom accommodation. That shoots up to over 95% of those households in emergency housing. And there's a clear disparity between the demand for smaller size accommodation and the availability.
Could I just come back with a
yes,
quick
yes, if you wish, Pete, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, I guess the other bit, just try and tease out, maybe for my own understanding really, is we do seem to purchase a lot of properties, especially within Newtown now. And I guess in a way that may solve the problem for us to a degree, but it still leaves the problem overall in the market because it's taking private properties out of the supply. So, you know, do we have any plans to start building?
We do. We have a very active new build program. I know Andy's on the call, but we are now the biggest provider of new social housing in Powys. And it reflects the demand. You know, we have to kind of be cognizant that it's small size accommodation. We also need that family sized accommodation. But you've made a really salient point, Councillor Pete, in terms of there's not enough properties, and homelessness is a clear example of a dysfunctional housing market, and that's the context that we work within. It's meeting demand against a limited supply.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks, Councillor Pete. Any further points or questions for Richard or for Gareth? Richard, I would just I'll relay some comments from one of the members of the committee, Gareth Hall, who was unable to be with us today, and comments with which I agree. Gareth is really encouraging officers in respect of this report and more broadly in their responses to audit reports to be very conscious of the outcomes, effectiveness, impact of the actions that they are registering against the recommendations. What does success look like and how will it be measured? Really to drive this, to drive the value for money, point. And Gareth asked if we would register that in respect of the management actions for this report, but make the point more broadly for officers when they're responding to all and any internal audit reports. But echoing my earlier comments, I heard more of that in what Richard said than I necessarily saw in the text. So we'll look forward to continuing to see a compassionate and effective approach to this. But as Gareth said in his introduction, we're providing this service in an extremely challenging context. But I can see Graham wants to just come in. Councillor Graham?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a very quick question, Richard. I represent the ward in Wellspool, where we have a particular problem with a shortage of housing. And I'm just wondering, have we got particular areas of Powys where homelessness is a bigger problem than anywhere else? You know, do we have major centres that need urgent attention?
Thanks, Councillor Graham. I think it is, I don't think it's any coincidence, it is the major towns they are sort of, when you look at the demand, it is sort of centered around our 5 major towns. But 1 bedroom need is prevalent across the piece. But yeah, if you were to run the Common Housing Register and look at the number of homeless presentations, it would be the Welsh Pools, the New Towns, the Llandrydnod, Brecon and Ystrad Gynlais. That draws the higher numbers, but it is across the piece in Powys. It is 1 bedroom accommodation, but in terms of answer the question, it's predominantly the 5 major towns that we have. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Councillor Graham. I'm just going to pause. Are there any further points on here? Or if there are no further points or questions, the committee is happy to note the report from Audit Wales and the management recommendations that Richard has talked us through. Thank you very much. We're able to note the report, and we will move on to our internal audit items, our swap items. And the first item is item 6, and that is the swap report on mandatory training. And I'll invite I'll invite Ian to introduce this report briefly, and Sarah Quibell is here for management to support our discussion. So Ian.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. We undertook an audit review of the Council's mandatory training programme, and that focused on the effectiveness, the efficiency and the compliance within that programme. Training responsibilities are split between corporate training, which is led by the Learning and Development team, and school training, which is overseen by the school support team. There are 6 core modules of mandatory training that all staff have to undertake, and that includes counsellors. The corporate areas benefited from very structured monitoring, and then they have met their 90% target for compliance, and that's been supported by a live BI dashboard. However, in contrast, schools have lacked formal oversight and averaged just 53.5% at the time of the audit in terms of compliance. I think this disparity highlights the need for consistent visibility and accountability across all services. So therefore, as a result of that, the very much dichotomous split version, we issued a split opinion in our audit. And as a result, we gave substantial assurance for the corporate training element that reflected strong performance and governance. And we gave a limited assurance opinion for schools due to a weaker policy, unclear processes and poor compliance. Improvements we recommended including enhancing policies with clearer timelines and exemption criteria, having integrated school data within the corporate dashboard to give greater oversight, and to develop unified reporting and monitoring tools to close the gaps in terms of compliance. I'll pause there, Chair, and hand it back to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ian. And on the basis that everyone has read the detail of the report, that's a very helpful introduction. I'll open the floor to Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Ian. I think it's always helpful. And that I'm really looking for assurances, probably from the management and office.
Chris, sorry, I didn't invite Sarah to come in to make any remarks before I opened the floor to questions. Chris, sincere apologies from me. It's entirely my fault. Could you hold your question, Chris?
Of course.
While I invite Sarah to make some overarching remarks before I bring colleagues in. Apologies, that was me. Sarah.
No problem at all. Thank you ever so much, Chair. And I just wanted to say that, we took the findings of the report seriously, and we've moved at pace with the actions that are in respect of education alone. So there was a specific action about making sure that the GDPR and cybersecurity processes for schools are managed through Trent, and that is now in place. So we are able to see that. We could see it before, but it wasn't through Trent. So that's now in place. the mandatory training dashboard is fully in place. We're undertaking final testing with schools to kind of get over the ICT linkage between the local authority and schools. So 4 schools are currently working with us just to make sure that they can only see their own staff when they log in, because it's important that we maintain the confidentiality and security of that. There was another action which was around incorporating training requirements into the school LA partnership agreement, and that is also complete, and the LA partnership agreement is out with schools at the moment just for them to sign up to and return. And that core monitoring centrally is now a lot easier with the mandatory training dashboard in place, and we're able to target to individual schools and individual roles if need be. So I think what I wanted to say is we've moved forward at pace with the actions, and imminently schools will be able to see the dashboard themselves to assist them in having oversight of the compliance a bit more easily, rather than having to go through individual training courses. And as a result of having that in place, we have already seen some improvements in the compliance rates.
Thank you, Sarah. Before I open it to questions from members, I'll bring in Councillor James Gibson-Watt as the cabinet lead, if you'd like to say a few words, Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, well, I mean, I'm sort of pleased to see this report, although obviously very concerned about it, and very pleased to hear that the actions that Sarah has outlined in terms of reacting to the need to vastly improve the compliance at school level with these training requirements. And I'm particularly focused on the issue of safeguarding, where I think for everybody was an enormous wake-up call. The recent report into the Child Practice Review report into the appalling abuse carried out by a North Wales head teacher over many years, and a very high-profile criminal case, but outlined. I mean, that report takes some reading. Actually, it's a chilling report, and a sort of perfect example of massive multi-agency corporate failure. So I just wanted to reassure the committee that as portfolio holder, I take this matter incredibly seriously. It's right at the top of my agenda, and as I say, I'm pleased to hear the compliance actions that have been taken. However, I think there's a lesson for all of us as members of council, particularly those of us who are members of governing bodies, around this issue. And it is very, very important that councillors who sit on governing bodies raise this issue at governing bodies meetings and do whatever they can to ensure that their schools comply, and the staff comply, because it seems obvious from the figures that the issue is not taken as seriously as it should be at school level, and it jolly well should be. So I just want to provide some reassurance to the committee that, as far as I'm concerned, as the political lead, if you like, this is a top priority issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that assurance, Councillor Graves. It's very much appreciated. I'm just going to, before I bring Councillor Chris back in, I'm just going to give Nina the opportunity to say something. Then I'm going to go to Councillor Chris, Councillor Pete, and then John.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in and provide assurance that the Corporate Safeguarding Board will be overseeing this moving forward as well, and keep a very close eye on it with a specific agenda item. But we have been overseeing the compliance and in terms of training within the schools, in terms of safeguarding and vowed RSV, and we've had an update on the work that's been undertaken by the Education Service, and we can see that the improvements are starting to be made. But I just wanted to give you that assurance that the Corporate Safeguarding Board will be ensuring that this is kept on our priority agenda moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nina. Much appreciated. I'll bring in Councillor Chris. Chris.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for those responses. I think it certainly it gives some firmer assurance, because when I read this, I mean, the statements coming in of lack of formal training policies, gaps and risks on the weak accountability, that gives me real cause for concern. We've flagged up in previous reports from the corporate position around violence against women and domestic abuse because the training and the mandatory training compliance was lower than elsewhere. We do understand that schools need different levels of safeguarding training, but this is a key provision. And when I then see 53% compliance, I'm thinking, what's going on? We're developing a dashboard. I'm pleased to see that you've got a dashboard, but there's quite a bit of work to be done in order to move this up. So I'm grateful for the report coming in. With internal audit, Ian, how far you give limited assurance, how far would it need to go in order for it to go lower than that? Because to me, this gave me, I was very disappointed when I read this, and it was a real concern. But I'm pleased with the responses that came from Sarah and from James, Councillor James, because that does give me some assurance that this has been taken seriously and we will improve going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chris. Sarah and Ian, I'm going to bring both of you back in at the end, if that's okay, to pick up any and all questions and comments from committee members. So if you could keep notes of your responses, and then I'll bring you both back in at the end. But I've got quite a number. Unsurprisingly, I've got a number of members who are lined up to talk, and I would prefer that they had the opportunity to speak before I go back to both of you. So I've got Councillor Pete, and then John, then Councillor Graham, and then Councillor Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just two overarching questions, please. So the report appears to be measuring completeness, and I guess for me it's one thing completing the training, but how do we measure the success of that training, and how do we measure its effectiveness is one. And then the other one, I'm just a bit confused when I see the term mandatory used, because for me, if we use mandatory, then that means the training really must be needed, but then we've set ourselves a target of 90%. So the 90% in mandatory is just a bit conflicting for me. And off the back of that, what's being done to get to 100%? Because having 10% of staff potentially untrained is potentially quite a risk, really. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pete. We'll bring Sarah in. Other colleagues have had the opportunity to ask questions. John.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members will recall that when we were discussing the annual government statement at, I think, the last meeting, I raised a query about the level of training that is currently completed by members. And it applied to GDPR, the IT, and other aspects of work. Although this is very, very good in terms of the corporate result for staff, I do think we ought to give some further attention to member training and making sure that they actually attend the courses. This is referred to again later on in the meeting here today, page 269, within the information governance report. There's a comment made there about the I think it's only 80% of members have completed the GDPR and IT course.
Thank you, John. Perhaps when we go back to officers at the end of the questions, Clive might be able to help us out there as well, because I'm not sure that that's a Sarah answer.
Yeah.
And I'll just pop in, forgive me, colleagues, but I'll just pop in on the back of John's reference to the annual governance statement, and pick up the kind of lack of transparency that the report made apparent in the way that the mandatory training data is reported in the annual governance statement. And obviously we would look to maximise the transparency with the appropriate inclusion of the school's compliance data in the future. Graham, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've been pretty vociferous over a number of years about training throughout the council, so I welcome this report, and it is pleasing to see that we've come quite a long way, I think, in the years since I've been a councillor in the training programme. But the one area that really concerns me on this report is that we're saying that only 66% of our social services and wellbeing staff have completed cybersecurity and GDPR. I would have thought that area alone is one of the most sensitive that we've got within the council, in terms of identifying people and children and young people. And I wonder if I could have some information on why it's at that low figure, because I think it's the lowest other than education, and what action is being taken to make sure that's back to where it should be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Graham. We'll come to the answers. I'm going to take Councillor Danny's question, and then I'm going to go back to officers for the responses. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just really after some clarity, really. I'm not so sure that it is a question. I'm just really trying to get my head around the 53% compliance of the school. It maybe it's already been covered to some point, but is it something that's dropped off in recent years? Is it governed by perhaps law changes or new laws that have come in and they failed to keep up in that way because of the amount of training? Is there enough support for them for the training? And then I suppose that brings me on to my next point, really, or next question. What is the timeline for addressing this, really, I suppose? Because it is quite, well, yeah, high priority. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Danny. So I think we'll look to Ian and Sarah and Clive to support, and Nina's got her hand up as well. So I'll go to Sarah first, and then I'll also bring in Clive and Nina, and then I invite Ian to make any final comments. Sarah.
Thank you very much, Chair. There was a reference to policies, and I think it's important that I point out that, for example, Vouder SV and safeguarding have national frameworks. So schools are working to those very clear national frameworks, and they have different levels within them. And whilst it's not an excuse, we do come across sometimes that staff who are compliant in, say, Group B and Group C in safeguarding, but have lapsed in their Group A. So it's about maintaining those levels, all of those levels, but just to give assurance that just because someone may look non-compliant in Group A, quite often they've got compliance in higher levels of safeguarding training. There was a question about the 90% versus all, with it being mandatory. And absolutely the expectation is that all staff complete it, but that little slippage, that gap, is to accommodate sickness absence and new starters, etc. I think that's why the corporate and the schools level is at 90%. And then there was a question around whether there was an increase in training requirements for schools. That there has been an increase in training requirements for schools. So the recent safeguarding framework saw quite a significant increase. However, it's a requirement for everybody to undertake. So we're supporting schools with that. For example, Group B resources were issued to schools in September. That's 6 modules of training for the designated safeguarding lead to deliver across schools. And in terms of the timeline, it's an active piece of work now. I think I've captured all the points, Chair, but if there's anything I've missed, please let me know.
Thank you. I'll bring in Clive and then Nina.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. If I can deal with the issue raised by John to start with regard to member training. Member training obviously is very, very concerning and has been picked up. I can tell you that I'm getting the figures here. As of the 1st of November, the training was at 93%. So that's a significant improvement on the previous figure. So we have looked at that, John, and have done that. Insofar as the issue raised by Councillor Graham Breeze was concerned in relation to social services training, again the figures which I've just been given are that adults are 89.6% and children are at 92.5%. Members, you can rest assured that the Chief Executive and CLT take this report really seriously and have therefore made it clear that mandatory training is mandatory training, subject of course to the point raised by Sarah about 100% is impossible because of sickness absences and the fact that an individual can be employed on day one, and yet the report for training could be taken on day 2, and therefore there would be no opportunity for that individual to be trained. So there's that. In terms of, I think what we have missed is the timeline for improvement within the education service, and perhaps Sarah can give us some details about the timeline. But I hope that gives members the assurance that they may seek.
Thank you very much, Clive. That's helpful. I'll come back to you, Sarah, to add anything on the timeline after I bring in Nina.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Graham, for your question. I just wanted to provide some clarity on that. You're looking at the mandatory training compliance table, which I think is under point 2. You'll see within that table the compliance statistics for adult services, children's services, and community wellbeing separately. Now, when you look at the line saying social services and wellbeing, that's for about 3 people that oversee the whole of the service area. So when we got a compliance figure of 66.7%, I think that's just one person who went a couple of days over the timescale to do their GDPR training. So I just wanted to give you that assurance. That's not social services, adults and children. That is just a couple of people, and I'll get the figure, but I think that's at 100% now. So I just wanted to give you that assurance. Thank you.
Thanks, Nina. Thank you. Sarah, is there anything you can add, please, on the timelines point, please?
Yeah, certainly. So as I said, it is an active piece of work now. So it is being undertaken during this academic year, and we would hope to see further improvement as we move across this academic year.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Clive, you've got your hand up again.
Thank you, Chair. I'm because of the concern which members have taken with regard to particularly the schools figures, I wonder whether the committee would consider making a recommendation, and it's not for me to do this normally, but I'm just wondering whether you consider making a recommendation to ask all governing bodies to put a standing item on their agendas to deal with the mandatory compliance rates until such a time as their own rate gets to the required level. So it's just a suggestion for me. I wonder whether the committee would consider it.
I'll invite comments from committee members as to whether they think, and also Clive, I guess is that an appropriate thing for Governance and Audit Committee to ask for, or would it be more appropriate come from Learning and Skills Committee? Oh, I think it's a good idea. I'm just working out the governance of who should, which committee should.
Chair, this is an item which is before this committee. This committee can make that recommendation. The enforcement is a different thing because you can't enforce a government body to do it. But a recommendation, I would hope from this committee would have hopefully have a significant impact. I'm hoping.
Yes, thank you very much, Clive. From my perspective, if that recommendation were framed in a risk and from a risk and an assurance perspective, it feels to me that it would sit squarely within this committee's remit if colleagues were agreeable that the committee would endeavour to obtain better levels of assurance that these matters were being progressed and that the risk of the risk associated with colleagues failing to undertake their mandatory training was being controlled more effectively if we had that level of focus that Clive recommends or Clive is suggesting within schools. I'll bring you in, Pete, but would colleagues support that approach?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Clive. And if that recommendation, Kath and Carrie-Anne, if that recommendation from this committee could be framed very much from a risk and assurance perspective, I think we would like to make it. Thank you. Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, I did just want to add a comment around that as well, actually. So I was listening to Sarah and Clive and the explanations around why we're not at 100% for the mandatory training, which I guess is the SWOT report is at a point in the year and as a snapshot. So I didn't know if across the board, if there is like a training year, if that makes sense, and then the report that we were just talking about could actually be produced at the end of that training year when hopefully things like the sicknesses, absences, etc. would have been ironed out.
Councillor Pete, I don't think there's a training year. I think it's a year in terms of employment. So from the day when an individual first joins, their training year starts from then. If you see what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much, colleagues, and thank you for the quality and concern expressed through this this discussion. We've spent quite a lot of time on this particular agenda item, but I think it was entirely appropriate. Just before we move on, I'm going to bring Ian back in. Ian, the question that I have is, when would a follow-up be conducted in the schools area to give further assurance in terms of progress against actions? And connected with that, and this is probably a question for members as well as for Ian, but it feels to me that this is an internal audit report which the internal audit working group of this committee could examine in more detail to seek further assurance on the committee's behalf that the actions were being progressed accordingly. Ian.
Absolutely, Chair. I think it's really important that we have an independent follow-up of this report, and so that's going to be in three ways. It will be firstly that as part of the action tracking process, we'll pick that up and the implementation of those actions will be reported through that process to senior management and to the working group. Secondly, I agree with you. I think at some point, at a period when it's reasonable to allow the service to improve and implement all of the actions, that we then invite them to the internal audit working group to give us an update. And then finally, we will actually then carry out a formal follow-up, probably about, we're looking six to 9 months down the line, where we go away and we actually physically test the evidence to make sure that those things that there've been commitment to are actually in place. So there's 3 layers of follow-up that we'll go through over the course of the next 3 to 9 months.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So this will feature in your audit plan for 25, 26. No, we're in that. Sorry, 26, 27. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Right, last word, Councillor Danny, and then we need to move on.
Yeah, thank you. I just wondered, is this information ever compared with other local authorities, other areas? Is it something that we should do? Will it show an emerging pattern of areas that need extra support or extra information, or show problems developed? It's just a thought. It's not really a question.
No, thanks very much, Councillor Danny, because what I think you're talking about there is benchmarking, which the committee has shown quite an interest in. So I think I would leave that point with Sarah and Nina and colleagues to consider how we might benchmark our own performance with others. And obviously Clive as well from a corporate perspective. But I think we do need to move on from this item, or we will run out of time. But thank you very much for all the questions and for the answers, and thanks very much to Ian and Sarah and Nina and Clive for their contributions to this discussion. I'll hand back to Ian for the swap progress report, and also bring in Mary Thomas, who will speak to progress against management actions should that be required. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. This is item 7 on your agenda today, and it's a progress report from SWAP at the 31st of October 2025. So I will just run through the headlines for you. Firstly, in terms of planned progress, we have completed 40% of the work to date, not to date at that point. 26% of that is, another 26% is either in draft or is work in progress at the moment. At this point, we're remaining flexible. The work programme remains unchanged, but we have shifted things around to fit in with client needs throughout the year. But the work programme remains unchanged, and we are on track to deliver the audit plan at the end of the year. In terms of outcomes, 70% of the opinion-based work that we've done gives a positive outcome, and this is in line with the reasonable assurance opinion of previous years, and so there's consistency there. And I can't tell what the future holds, but at the moment we're looking at probably being a reasonable opinion if I had to give a judgment at this stage. In terms of areas of concern, we've had 3 audits that have issued those concerns. The first is around mandatory training, which was a high corporate risk, which we just considered. The second is on network boundary defences, which you're going to be considering as an exempt item later on. And then the third is around Newtown High School, which is going to come to the next meeting. And then finally, in terms of actions and action tracking, the council over the course of the last 2 years has implemented 96.8% of all internal actions, which is excellent performance. And I think this has been driven by a commitment both from ourselves in SWAP and also the council in terms of the effort and attention they've given this matter. So I'll pause there, Chair, and I'll happily take any questions.
Thank you very much. And I think Ian's final point is worth dwelling on. I think we should note for the record the focus that the Chief Executive and CLT have given to moving forward on outstanding recommendations, and there has been a real focus on it, and that focus has had results. So I for one, I'm very grateful for that leadership that Emma and CLT have shown to get us to where we are. Councillor Peat.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Ian. Yeah, I endorse your comments there. It's been some great improvement made on these overdue actions now. I just wanted, if I could, Ian, to just tease out, it's on page 168 in the pack, which I think is basically the first page of your report. It does talk about these 14 overdue, and it gives the impression that they are overdue for over 2 years. So A, I wanted to check if that is the case, or if I've just misread the wording, and B, is there some sort of context in terms of, are these priority 1 items or priority 3?
Thank you, Councillor Pete. I apologise if the wording is misleading in any way in the report. The items, I think the 2-year refers to the wider 96.8% in terms of action tracking, whereas the 14 actions are at this point in time. So they would have been at the 31st of October, where there were 14 overdue actions. In terms of the timeliness of those, only four are older than 90 days, and they are just over the 90 days. So that's our determination of things that are long overdue. In terms of those 4 actions, there 2 are from the schools, and we are addressing those through those forums, and 2 are from a direct payment audit that we undertook. And we received feedback actually at the working group that indicated that those direct payment actions had been implemented, although we are still waiting assurance from the children's side on that actually. So so it appears that 2 of those are more around the communication lag about the implementation, and 2 are with schools, and they are outstanding, and we are following those up. So to answer your question, long way around, they're not 2 years old. They're much shorter than that, and therefore only 4 are in that long-standing category.
Could I just come back, Lynn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. And sorry, I just want to say there's absolutely no need to apologise for misleading, because I'm sure it hasn't. It's more my understanding of the terminology in there. So thank you for explaining that. But absolutely no need to apologise on that score. But thank you anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. Thanks very much. Any other comments on the progress report, please? If there are none, we can note and thank colleagues for the progress report for Q2. Thank you very much. We can move on then to agenda item 8, which, well, we're moving into our corporate items, and agenda item 8 is the Governance and Audit Committee annual report. I would like to thank Connor for his support in helping me to draft the report, and to thank colleagues for their contributions and comments on the report while it was being drafted, and invite any questions or final comments from committee members. The purpose today is we need to formally agree and sign off the report, and it will then go forward to Cabinet and Council as a record of our business from last year. But thank you very much, Connor, for your support in preparing that. Questions or comments, please? If there are no further questions, is the committee content to formally agree the report and for it to be submitted?
Move.
Seconder, thank you. Moved and seconded. Everyone content? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you to Connor.
Yes, indeed.
And we'll move into agenda item 9, which is the Q2 fraud and error report, and look to Yvette to briefly introduce the report, and then we'll take questions.
Trusting that you've all had a read through.
Yes.
I'm sure there is a few questions going to come, but hopefully a lot of it is self-explanatory. Obviously, the fraud side of things, the report was from the end of September Q2, and the NFI results that were incorporated then from the reports that we received from SWAP are slightly newer than that. So the report obviously explains our current caseload, the sorts and types of allegations that we're working towards, and then goes on to detail some of the results that we've had since we last came to committee, and the kind of things that obviously we're still working with, looking at, advising, and any sort of serious risks, which there wasn't anything in Q2 that was raised at that point. I'm not sure there's anything else really I need to whistle stop tour, so maybe should hand straight to questions if that's
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. That's great. Gareth, from Audit Wales.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add that the briefing note that was included from Audit Wales, which is within the pack, does seek that those charged with governance ask for further information around the council's processes and what actions the council is taking, and I can provide that assurance to members of the committee that we are pleased to see the update from the council to yourselves so that you can see the latest data around the progress of the NFI and also other areas around counter fraud.
Thank you for that clarification, Gareth. Very much appreciated. And I will bring in Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks for that. It's just a bit of a general question, really. I noticed in the report there, I think if I've got my maths right, there's 174 open cases, let alone dealing with all the others and finishing those off, I guess. So, in terms of the open ones, and as they come to you, first question is do you have a criteria for dealing with them in any sort of priority order? And then I guess off the back of that, with that workload there, just wanted to ask if you feel you're staffed up adequately to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. Yes, so our open cases change literally on sometimes an hourly basis or less than that, because obviously we receive constant referrals or we get telephone calls asking us, internally to take up and pick up other cases or offer advice on, as well as obviously we're opening new cases all the time within the NFI portal because we're still working through several thousand of those. Our intelligence officers are actually working on the NFI recheck council tax ones, and the 63 that you can see that was reported at the time, they fall to myself and Ros, my other colleague, to investigate those. As far as priority goes, everything becomes priority, because when we're certainly looking into potential criminal cases, we need to keep those moving. So we can't put those on the back burner. We can't stall on those. The only sort of problem that we may have is trying to engage other organisations that we may need to work with, such as the Department of Work and Pensions, for argument's sake. If there is any DWP administered benefits that are at risk with what we've established is a risk from the council's perspective, or if say for an internal case, if a staff member goes off sick and provides a fit note from the doctor to say that they're not fit to be interviewed, should we need to interview them? So there's a number of things that can get in the way, but the simple answer is we try to treat everything as priority. We try to keep everything moving. It is difficult because we are a small team, but because not every case will come to the fruition at the same time. Usually it's staggered. We just try and keep this regular flow, and to go along with the proactive work that we do that also generates more cases. So in some ways we're masters of our own stretching, really, but we try as hard as we possibly can so that nothing gets left from that point of view. And obviously if we're looking at something that we are not sure or we do not think is going to become a potentially criminal case, then the potentially criminal cases always will take priority to keep those moving as quickly and as consistently as possible.
Okay. No, thank you for explaining that, Yvette. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvette. I'll bring in John and then Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. I was very pleased to see the inclusion of the briefing note on the National Fraud Initiative. Unfortunately, though, when I went to Appendix 2 and looked at the Paris data, I found it frankly incomprehensible. I just don't understand it at all. And can anybody help me?
Well, I'm rather hoping that my colleague Ian from SWAP, who pulled these reports with other colleagues from SWAP, will be able to steer in that direction. And in some ways, John, I share your confusion looking at those, as I'm sure do my SWAP colleagues. But I'll let Ian answer that one, if you will, Ian, please.
So Ian, you've got a tough job of trying to explain this to us.
Well, I think I'm probably going to fail to a certain degree on it. Obviously, the National Fraud Initiative is run by the Cabinet Office, and they are the ones that determine the matches and the criteria that we need to comply with it in terms of that matching process. When we received the matches for this exercise, or before actually, we identified a strategy about how we were going to approach them, who was going to investigate them, and how they were going to be prioritised. And the priority in terms of Powys is to investigate all high or very high risk matches by the end of the year. Those categories of high and very high are not determined by ourselves. They're determined by the Cabinet Office and the very clever kind of computer kind of analytics that sit behind those. But they are evaluated on two axes, I suppose. It is firstly the type of match that it is. So whether it be housing benefit to payroll or housing benefit to something else. So that type of general match is categorized. And then secondly, it's done on precision of the data. So it looks at that match and it makes a judgment about how accurate and how useful is that data for that individual match. And from those, it comes up with these areas, John. And I'm afraid that's all I can offer for you at this stage. I'm sure that I can talk to our colleagues in Audit Wales and the Cabinet Office, and I can probably come to something that is a bit more kind of scientific and structured, and I'm more than happy to do that. But that's my understanding at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Thank you, Ian. It really hasn't made it very much clearer at all. I mean, I would like to just take one example there. Blue badges, 463 are listed. Very high risk, 393, high risk, 68, medium risk, 2. I mean, we've either got fraud on blue badges or we haven't. I just don't understand the different levels coming in here. As I said, any help you can give me on this, I'd be grateful.
Just to respond to that, Chair, if I may, those matches are only, they are where data lines up and indicates there is a potential error. Now, therefore, there are things that that have more intelligence around them and are more likely to be frauds, and therefore the high risk matches. But that's not to say that something with less integrity around the data, it's still not a fraud. So we have to try and prioritize in that way, I suppose.
All right.
Thank you. Gareth, I can see your hand up. Or do you want to come in to help us with this point?
Just to confirm that we will be producing a report next year where we will set this out, and this is really useful feedback from the Vice Chair in terms of the clarity of the reporting. So we will take this, and if it's okay with the Vice Chair, we will contact the Vice Chair separately and just pick that up with you, with the team who are leading on that report, so that we can make sure that the report next year is as clear as we can be to those who are receiving the report and looking for the assurance from that. So if that's okay with the Vice Chair, we'll pick that up separately.
Very happy to do that. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Gareth, for making that offer, and thanks, John. Yeah, because as Gareth has just said, it's difficult to be assured when we don't really understand properly what we're reading. But thank you for look forward to that report next year, and thank you for picking up our concerns, Gareth. Right, I'm going to bring in Councillor Chris and then Councillor Pete, and those will be the last points on this report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. It's always helpful. You mentioned you're a small team, but what I can't get a feel from the report is whether this is growing or is it stable. Obviously, if it is growing and we are able to determine that there is fraud, there is obviously then a prosecution and funds that come back in, which is helpful to move things forward. So is there areas that are rising particularly, or is it relatively stable in relation to what we're seeing? And is the cost of living having any impact on the, and is there anything that we can then do to try and prevent that?
Gosh, there's a lot of questions in there, Councillor Chris. I'll try and pick them
Yvette,
out,
can
but
you
just
just
remind me.
Yvette, can you just hold your answer? I'm going to ask Pete to ask his final question, and then I'm going to give you the final word.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just related a bit back to my prioritising question as well before. So this looks here like the first table I'm looking at, Exhibit 5. There's 16,500 data matches, which I guess we've tried to prioritise by very high risk, medium. But then Yvette said to me they look into absolutely everything. But I never saw 16,500 cases in your report, Yvette. So I guess I was just trying to understand the correlation between that 16,500 and the 100 and whatever it was in your report.
Right. Okay, let me answer yours first, Councillor Peake. Well, I think of it. So what you're seeing is 16,500. That is all of the matches for the whole of the council, which goes across different service areas. So different service areas have responsibility for looking into their own, as it were. So, and my team just focuses on household composition within council tax. So like single person discount, rising 18s, that type of thing. So we've got probably, I think, about 9,000 of those to work through, but none of ours are risk scored. So we don't have any risk scoring within those, which is quite difficult. And we have raised that. And I believe SWAP have also raised that back to the Cabinet Office, because you don't really know where to start with that. So I've actually got one of my officers, one of my teams that is just working on that full time, basically, without, you know, without being able to know which is priority and which isn't until you sort of work through it. So that's quite difficult. But going back to the 16,500, one of the colleagues mentioned earlier on about blue badges. You know, there is a lady within the team that deals solely with blue badges. We've got the housing matches, you know, whether that's tenancy to payroll or something like that. So each service area has a responsibility for their own matches, if that makes sense. And obviously Ian and myself have been sitting in with training sessions to help and assist people who are responsible for those matches. And if the people looking at those think there's something wrong or it's potentially criminal, they come straight back to me with it anyway to refer it back to me. So we don't have all of those. If we did, I think I'd be sitting here bald, Councillor Peake, to be honest, because we just wouldn't be able to cope with that, and we certainly wouldn't be able to deliver it by the end of the year, shall we say. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, could I, Vet Chair, just come in with a quick one there? So sorry again, maybe my understanding. So I get the bit about different services dealing with it. Are you saying you are looking at 9,866, the case, all of those that haven't got a priority on them?
Those are the ones that fall to my team, yes.
And you're looking at all of those.
But what we're trying to do is to work on, because ours are not in, and this is where it gets even more confusing. Ours fall into an area of the matches called recheck. So they are the more recent ones. So we are, with agreement of obviously senior management, looking at only the release that came out in January of this year, which will be last year's upload, if you like, our data upload. So we're looking at all the most recent ones, and we're doing a test then of what's called multiple matches, because multiple matches, which is a large number, falls through to other departments' matches that they've already looked at. So it's almost like a capture all of everything else that's within the matching. So if you've got household composition that we're looking at, if it's household composition to blue badges deceased, blue badges deceased has already been looked at. So the council will already be aware, if that makes sense. So we don't need to look at that. But until we go into the match, we don't know what it's matched against. So, which is a bit difficult. And it would be really, really helpful if the Cabinet Office could somehow provide a risk scoring so that we know what we're doing. So in answer, no, we will not be looking at all 9,000. You know, I would say, you know, possibly we'll be closer to 50% of that with our testing. Obviously, when we test some of the multiple matches, if they come back with positive results, then we would continue to pursue those.
Okay, so I guess, sorry, Chair, I guess in a way then there is a risk that in the 4,900 that we're not looking at, there might be an issue. Yeah, but
Just to come back on that though, Councillor Pete, I don't know whether you're aware, and I'm, forgive me if you are aware, with the National Fraud Initiative, when we get the next lot of match results, it will also show the previous year, the previous year, the previous year, because they don't delete those out. So if something presents again, if it presents again, presents itself again, then it doesn't just disappear and we forget about it. So if it's there again, then obviously we need to look at it.
Okay, thank you.
I think we'll need to move on. Yvette, Councillor Chris's questions, particularly around the stable or growing in particular areas and cost of living impacts.
Thank you. Yeah, you also mentioned about prosecutions, Councillor Chris. Just to make it a little bit clearer, whilst the council does still look to prosecute people, it actually costs a significant amount of money to prosecute people. So that doesn't actually bring money into the team. And conversely, if we have people that do owe money legitimately that we are able to bill and recover that money, sometimes that is not just cheaper on the public purse, but the right thing to do, and we end up with a better settlement almost than a court may give us, unless it was a big case and we were going for proceeds of crime, for argument's sake. And if it was that, then we would be going to Crown Court, which obviously again, the costs are very high, but is well worth it when we've got cases like that. And indeed, we have done that in the past. So it's not so much about the prosecutions generating the money. It is actually about the work of our team, where the gains that we bring in, the future gains, the money that the council will be getting back in, as well as the bills that then we generate through our work that are due to be recovered from the people that have raised those, with their failing to notify or falsely representing their circumstances. Are we seeing a change? I think the simple answer to that is yes. It hasn't really slowed down since COVID and then the cost of living, and certainly with council tax rises and the premiums that have been introduced, some years now, we do see that side of things is constantly growing. We're getting more and more, and unfortunately, I don't really think that next week with the budget is going to change that much. It may well make things worse, but we'll sit and wait and see what happens. So we always have a steady number of referrals. Sometimes we see a spike, which might come from internal referrals, which could be after we've delivered a training session or we've sent some information out that's made people think, and then the referrals come in. Or it could well be as a result of some of the proactive work that we do as a regular basis, because we do generate a lot of our own work.
Thank you.
Have I missed anything?
No, I think you've covered most of it off.
Thank you very much. I'm going to just pause and thank Yvette very much on behalf of the committee. Every time we have a conversation and a discussion around fraud and error with Yvette, I personally feel that Powys County Council is very lucky to have someone as professional and as diligent as Yvette in this team, and I always take a great deal of confidence and assurance from Yvette's answers. So thank you, colleagues, for your excellent questioning, and thank you to Yvette for today and for the work that you and your small team do on a regular basis, day in, day out, to support the council. So thank you very much.
Thank you all very much as well. Thank you.
I'll move us on to item 10, Q2 Treasury Management, and bring in James Chappell to briefly introduce this item. James, you're very welcome.
Yeah, good morning, members. This is the, as you used to by now, the Q2 report that sets out the borrowing, the capital position and investments, and the VAT KPIs for the quarter. So the report sets out what borrowing's been undertaken, a summary of the capital programme, how the revised forecast through the year as the programme is changing. I just draw your attention to members to table 4. This has had an incorrect net revenue stream for 26-27 and 27-28 since the beginning of the year. Many apologies for that. We've circulated an updated table, and we'll update the table in the published reports there.
Thanks, Jane.
We have later on, we've got the economic forecast from our Treasury advisors, MUFG, and the VAT KPIs there. I think most members will have read it, so I won't go into too much detail.
Oh, thanks, James. Thank you. I'll open the floor to questions. For questions to James, please. John?
Yeah, James, thank you for your correction. I haven't accessed the revised figures. What impact has that had on the financing percentage?
So on the quarter two estimates, the net revenue stream should be just over 375 million, and that brings that down to a 4%. And for 27-28, it's just under 385 million, and it's 4.1%. So we're hovering around the 4% mark.
That's gratifying. I was a bit concerned about the 5% figure because, you know, in the days when I was on the finance panel, we were very concerned about the financing costs exceeding 5% and going towards 6%. That's what I was concerned about. The other thing that is concerning me here is the aged debt in highways and transport. I think I raised this question last time we looked at this. Have you any idea what's causing it? Still increasing.
Yes, there are a number of outstanding invoices in relation to bonds from developers that have not yet been paid. So these are bonds that the council holds whilst the developers carry out works in case we have to restate them. So my understanding is that until these bonds are paid, they cannot start their works. So, but I'll perhaps go back to the highways and just get a bit more detail for you around those couple of items.
If you would, James, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much, John. Thanks, James. Are there any further questions for James, please? If there are no further questions, I will. I think the committee is asked to scrutinise and note this report, which we have done. And if there are no further questions, we will move on to agenda item 11, which is the annual information governance report for 2024-25. And I believe Councillor Rafe Devlin is going to introduce this, and he is also supported by the team. So, Councillor Rafe.
Many thanks, Chair. Yes, so as you said, this is the Information Governance Report for 24-25, and the purpose of the report is to brief Cabinet on the information governance activities undertaken during that year and the compliance achieved for the financial year, and to provide a level of assurance to the Council's information governance arrangements and practices. Updates on information on the Information Management Assurance and Governance Plan are detailed in Section 4, and they note that of the 37 elements within the plan that spans the years 2023 to 2025, 26 of those elements had been completed, which equaled 70%. This included the implementation of an information governance hub to provide awareness training and templates for staff of both the council and schools, a review of postal checking regimes within relevant service areas, and development of a policy on the council's use of surveillance camera systems, which was also shared with schools for their use. Cybersecurity and GDPR mandatory training, of which we've discussed at length in previous items, is detailed in Section 6 with a graph provided which shows the compliance statistics for staff and members. Just to note that the x-axis on this graph is incorrect. The dates should span for the financial year to be consistent with the reporting period for this report, and that will be amended prior to it coming to Cabinet for approval. I won't go into detail about those compliance rates because we've discussed them at length, but of course, happy to take any questions from members. Personal data breaches are detailed in section 7, and they note that the information security incidents, this is the number of incidents for information security, we report a decrease of 15.64% from the 2023-24 year to 24-25. And this is a decrease of 3% compared to 2022-2023. The number of reported information security incidents for 2024-25 is lower than those reported in the last financial years too. The number of personal data breaches, which are those determined to be a personal data breach, rose marginally by 0.5% from 23-24 to 24-25, and by 13.25% compared to 22-23. And whilst the number of reported information security incidents has reduced, those determined to be personal data breaches has increased, with this year being the highest number to date. And section 7.6 details those personal data breaches, including misdirected emails to external parties, misdirected emails to internal parties, and both of which have seen an increase. And unauthorized disclosure to external parties, which has seen a considerable decrease, which was good to see. To put this into some context, there are figures included in 7.6 as to the numbers of emails featured. The council sends around 5 million emails per year, and so this accounts for a very small number of them, albeit it's important that we see a decrease to these number of incidents.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Oh, are you
okay.
finished?
There's a few more things to go through,
okay,
if that's okay.
Okay, fine, thank you.
So each year has seen a decrease in the number of personal data breaches that necessitate reporting to the Information Commissioner, with 2 being reported this year against 4 last year and 5 the year before. And of the 2 notifications to the Information Commissioner, they were related to a ransomware attack on one of the council's third-party software providers, and an officer leaving sensitive and confidential information outside a client's front door. And in both cases, the Commissioner took no further regulatory action other than tuition recommendations, of which all were accepted and implemented. Section 8 details the information requests, of which there were 1,289 valid requests for this year, which was an increase of just over 1% to the year previously. And the split between each of the information pathways, each of the 3 pathways, is detailed in section 8.1. Compliance rates have started to increase once again across the 3 regimes as the new compliance officers continue to learn and develop their ability with to apply the different legislation and to undertake different activities. And so when examining the reasons for non-compliance within the FOI and EIR requests, we find that 75% of non-compliant responses were due to delays in the provision of information by the service areas themselves, enabling a response to be drafted or released. And it's important to note that the rise in non-compliance within the information compliance team in 23-24 has directly impacted the service areas compliance levels, specifically delays in sending follow-up reminders and drafting responses that have contributed to an apparent increase in the service area compliance. However, this does not reflect a genuine increase in compliance by the service area, but rather a breakdown in the process of request management and follow-up by the information compliance team. The Information Commissioner's Office issued formal decisions over 5 complaints made to them, 2 for late subject access requests, 1 for late environmental information regulations request, and 2 complaints over the council's handling of the request. The compliance manager is the sole representative from a Welsh local authority on the Information Commissioner's upstream group, which just shows the level of expertise that we are very fortunate to have within the local authority. Information management is detailed in section 9, notes that a backlog in file review and destruction remains due to limited resources, varying level of service area engagement and competing staff priorities. However, this is being addressed with additional resources being identified. And so in conclusion, the senior risk owner's statement of assurance is one of reasonable assurance in that they are now able to provide a reasonable assurance that the Council's arrangements and plans align with the principles of good information governance. Within the reporting period, good progress has been made in certain areas, in particular the steps taken to improve the management and oversight of the Council's electronic information, while some areas still require strengthened internal controls and additional resources to ensure effective governance. Improvement plans are in place and actively monitored by the Corporate Information Governance Group. And that concludes the report. I'm happy to take any questions and will defer to officers for their expertise on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rafe. Very much appreciated. And I know Helen and Ellen are both with us today as well. Any questions for Councillor Rafe and or his officer colleagues? I'll go to Pete and then Chris. Councillor
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a quick one. Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Rafe. Just on the section 7.6, the personal data breaches, I wondered, are they things we discover, if that makes sense, or are they ones that are reported to us from various sources?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Pete. I believe it's both, but I'll just ask if Ellen could come in and just confirm that. Thanks.
So, sorry, Alan, shall I pick that up?
Yeah.
Yeah. In response to your question, Councillor Lewington, they could be both. We could receive notifications from the member of staff directly that they've noticed their error. We could have notifications through from the recipients as well, or other organisations. So the identification of the misdirected email, be it internal or external, could come from a number of sources.
Do we, if I may, Chair, yeah, do we have anything in place where we're monitoring or looking or checking, or are we just solely relying on people to come to us?
In terms of, are we monitoring whether we've had misdirected emails?
Yeah, do we do any sample checking or anything like that?
With the volume of emails which Councillor Devlin referred to at 5 million a year, we don't have the resources to spot check emails in that way.
No, okay, understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Chris, Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Pete, I had a very similar question, but I'll just build on that if I may. Obviously, if staff are reporting incidents in, that is helpful because it shows that they've got an awareness when something's gone wrong or they've clicked on the wrong link. What support do we then put in place for those members of staff? Do we give them extra training, or do we talk them through? Because obviously that can be quite devastating to that individual if they feel they breached some form of trust along the way, and it's how that we rebuild them and keep them functioning and not being stressed.
Yeah, that's a good point, Councillor Walsh. The team would treat every incident that's referred to them, or incident of breach that's referred to them, based on what was in front of them at the time. So sometimes we would sit down with the member staff, have a conversation with them, and you're right, many staff are very, very upset and worried when this happens. So we try to talk it through from a point of a learning exercise, so they understand what went wrong, why it went wrong, and we try and document some of those reasons and try and identify the reasons for errors being made, such as trying to do more than one thing at a time, or being disturbed by a telephone call, etc. We would potentially suggest many ways of not having a repeat offence, such as sometimes turning off autocomplete within the email to field, or clearing their histories, or undergoing some more training. But very often just the fact that the incident has happened, for many staff, that is a learning event in itself.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chris, and thank you, Helen. Any further questions on this annual information governance report for Councillor Rafe or his team, Helen and Ellen? No further questions. In which case, I will thank Councillor Rafe again for the annual report, and thank Helen and Ellen as well for their attendance and for answering questions. So thank you very much. We'll move on to item 12, the corporate safeguarding report, and I'll pass over to Nina for her regular update, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read, but just pull out a couple of the key highlights. So in front of you to note for information today is a report summarising the information discussed at the Corporate Safeguarding Board, which was held on the 11th of September. First thing to note is that the corporate safeguarding policy has been updated and reviewed. We've updated in terms of roles, responsibility, and following Audit Wales recommendations. That policy was agreed and signed off at the board, so that was done within the timescale as well. We received our normal regional safeguarding board update, so we make sure we're keeping track on any work, training, new guidance, reviews from other areas as well. So just to note that we keep up with that regional side. We had an item specific on suicide. This was at the request of Health and Care Committee. They'd asked that we look at that in more detail, and it was also picked up at a previous corporate safeguarding board. We had a real discussion to make sure that everybody understood what Powys County Council's role is within, and it's postvention. So the council's role in this area is primarily administrative, focused on postvention rather than prevention. But there was a really good discussion around the themes and suggestions made for how we could look to perhaps support staff well-being more in this area, particularly in schools. And we talked about available resources such as employee assistance programs, mental health first aid, and HR support was all discussed as well. We looked at safeguarding in education with an update on the Children Missing Education pilot, which is coming to a completion, feedback being given in terms of to Welsh Government. And we noted a concern about tracking children who are educated outside the county and those perhaps that move over the border, etc. So we picked that up and discussed that in more detail, and we'll be coming back to that at a future agenda item. We also had an update on elective home education, noting the continued numbers with children returning to school and increased movement between home education and school attendance as well. We looked at a Power BI dashboard has been introduced to support corporate annual safeguarding self-assessments. We noted the compliance with that and some areas that needed some improvement, and we've putting together a working group to look at that moving forward. We then had our regular updates in terms of safeguarding in housing. We also had social care and children's services. We also have a standing agenda item on mandatory training. One of the new areas that we've picked up is in terms of volunteers, ensuring they are receiving the safeguarding training required. And we've also updated the volunteer policy around to strengthen in that area. The importance of including school staff and governors in school safeguarding training discussions was also highlighted. And then we had a final agenda item on community tension. We received a presentation looking into social cohesion and the risks around that. We also then looked at a risk and mitigations in terms of that. So I just wanted to briefly highlight those key items to you as a committee today, just to give you assurance on the kind of things that we're covering at Corporate Safeguarding Board, and our next meeting is on the 11th of December. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nina. Thank you for that really helpful run through highlighting the key areas. Colleagues, any questions? Or so I've got Councillor Pete and then Councillor Chris. Questions for Nina.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Nina. Just on the suicide point and reading your comments in the report there, that obviously I won't read out all over again. But just recently in Newtown, where we've had a group called the Welsh Bikers for Suicide Prevention, which is all sort of focused to a degree towards older men, as you highlight in your report, and also trying to break down the sometimes macho macho thing of men that they won't come and reach out for help, but they will go to like a motorbike gang thing and chat to fellow members there. So I guess I just wondered, as part of your strategy, do you reach out to charity groups such as them to try and work with them?
Thank you, Councillor Peat. Thank you, Chair. The Welsh Bikers for Suicide Prevention are not a charity I've heard of, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. As I said briefly in my overarching report, you know, the local authority's role is very much in the post-prevention space, but I think obviously what we can do in terms of prevention as well, where appropriate, is really important. So can I take that back to the team, and we'll look into that for you. Thank you.
Yeah, and sorry if I made you. Yeah, if you need any details or any contacts, Nina, happy to provide them for you.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Councillor Peat.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thanks very much, Chris. Councillor Chris.
Yeah, thanks for the report. It's always a helpful one. I just want to pick up on the 2.9 on page 286. You mentioned about safeguarding referrals has increased, but what I picked up in this part of it is there was a reference to poor record keeping. And you'd also got that there was a student social worker placements that had been concluded or finished. I wanted to know, was that by design or was that as a direct result of poor record keeping? And then what does the authority do to support care homes in adopting good record keeping practice, because that is a huge risk in the continuity of care moving forward, and also can expose certain practitioners to professional conduct type risks as well.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Can I just make it clear from the start, they're two completely separate issues being discussed there, okay? So there are concerns in terms of the record keeping is to do with providers and some care homes. And, you know, let's be clear, this is some here. And the comment about student worker placements coming to an end is something completely different. So I just want to make that absolutely clear. There's no correlation there. And efforts are very much ongoing to work with our providers to help improve that record keeping. So that's through our commissioning team. You know, we're undertaking monitoring and checking of contracts, etc. And where required, we've got joint interagency monitoring panel as well, the JIMP. So we are looking to support providers to help improve record keeping. And we're also looking at how we can use appropriate AIs and digital tools in that area as well. So just to give you that assurance, separate issues. And yes, we are working with providers where concerns have been raised to help them put in place an action plan to help address any concerns. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A final question on this item to Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at community tensions, it says it's resulted in a risk score of 12. The detail might be already in there that I can't see, but I just wonder how 12 relates to what scale. Is it a one to 25? What?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Danny. Apologies, I probably could have worded this a bit better. And we've been looking at a risk. So we got a risk register. So we've been looking at what that risks could be scored. So off the top of my head, sorry, I don't have the details of it. I probably shouldn't have included that comment. I could have removed it. But just to say, I think what I'm trying to assure you of today is that the Corporate Safeguarding Board are looking at this, are helping to make sure that we're assessing the risk and putting in place appropriate mitigations and actions around this area. But thank you, Councillor Danny.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks, Nina, for your report, which is always provides a good level of assurance and plenty of opportunity to seek further assurance through discussion. So thank you very much. We've got about half an hour left of the meeting, and we've got two substantive items and a couple of other bits. So the majority of the final half hour I would obviously like to devote to our remaining substantive items, which are the risk deep dive and then our exempt item. So I'll move us on to item 14, which is our risk deep dive. And I'll invite Daniel Burgess to briefly introduce the slides, which have already been shared with the committee. So Daniel, if I could ask you to briefly give us a sort of focused run through of the slides, but let's allow the majority of time for a question and answer and an interrogation of the control framework and the management action relating to this risks. But over to you, Daniel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone. Yes, so as requested, I'll give a...
Have I missed the regulatory tracker?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, Danny.
See you in a bit.
Sorry, I am so sorry. This was my haste. Catherine, you have my sincere apologies. And if I do this again, you need to shout. Catherine, item 13, the regulatory tracker. Sorry, Daniel. Sorry, Catherine.
No, you're fine. I'll try to be speedy. So this is the quarterly update for quarter 2, which obviously is 1st of July to the 30th of September. And the report really has 2 main objectives. So to provide an overview of the recommendations that have been issued by our external regulators following audits, as well as supporting the committee in monitoring the implementation of those recommendations. It also offers assurance that actions are being taken and shows where delivery is delayed or off track. So we've included an extract of our regulatory tracker in the agenda pack, and this is on page 297. And the extract is taken from our interactive report, which does track those recommendations and the progress against them. So members of the Governance and Audit Committee do have full access to that report themselves. So in summary, so the summary for the quarter is page 291. So at the end of the quarter, we did have 30 recommendations in total, covering both those that were open and closed during the quarter. 6 new recommendations were received in the quarter. 3 of them were from Audit Wales as part of that national study we heard about earlier on temporary accommodation. So that wasn't specific to Powys, but the recommendations will be useful to apply here. And all of those are on track. And 3 came also from the Health and Safety Executive, and these are also on track as well. We have 29 recommendations that remained open, and of those 23 are on track and 6 are off track. And the information relating to the 6 off track is also within the covering report as well for you to view, which I'm sure you already have. And we have 1 recommendation that was completed during the quarter, which related to the Food Standards Agency. So hopefully that gives you a whistle-stop tour of where we are at.
Thanks, Catherine, and apologies again for whizzing over your item. Any questions or comments, please, from members? John, please.
Yeah, it refers really, thank you, Chair. It refers really to a comment made earlier when you referred to what Gareth Hall had said about neighbouring authority looking at the costs for net zero. I see here there's a recommendation here that was issued in February 23 about costing for the net zero, and we are currently situated in red. It said a draft map, route map to net zero has been drawn up and presented to CLT to action the outline plan required to deliver this objective. This is currently being reviewed. When might we expect a result?
Diane?
Thank you, Chair. The actual plan is still being worked up, and then it's going to go through a process of helping to strengthen through the Climate and Nature Steering Group, who are there kind of assisting as a member group with all of our climate and nature activity. And then it will go through the process of scrutiny and full cabinet report. So I anticipate that will be in January, February.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Thanks, John. Any further points or questions for the regulatory tracker? If not, I am going to move us on quickly to the risk deep dive. I will not bother with my introductory bit again. I will pass straight to Daniel. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time today. So yes, I'll whistle-stop tour of the Governance Audit Committee risk deep dive in regards to phosphate pollution. So you've had the pack, so I won't go through it in detail, but as you're aware that if phosphate nutrient exceedances exceed the target level in special areas of conservation, for example, they ask why, there is the inherent risk attached to that. The consequences of that are impact upon development within the catchments of those rivers, a decrease in the number of planning applications resulting in reduced income, reduced planning and other fee incomes, and also the potential for backlog of planning applications caused by limited planning ecologist resource. Potential impact of the delivery of projects and programs such as the council house building, 21st century school modernisation and regeneration projects, and that wider impact upon the economy. So the controls and actions essentially, so this communication is key obviously to all stakeholders involved in development, and the development of an action plan for the rivers at Y and Usk by the nutrient management boards. The Usk report is now published and the Y is due in the next few weeks as we understand, and it is with us for review. So essentially, what are the controls and actions? So investigate and action demonstrated projects to act as good practice and encourage others to mitigate, and investigate and report on what is currently being delayed because of the phosphate situation. Also then investigate through March's partnership, ways to address the differences and understand how we can work cross-border with that to find those solutions to unlock the development. Just moving on quickly, so some of the mitigation, this is obviously not all of it, but some of the examples I've shared here. Potential sites for wetland creation, which acts as a which can mitigate that phosphate leaching into the watercourses, but generally used for more point pollution sources, and less effective and harder to fund are the diffuse pollution, of course. But again, that can be looked at through improved land management, buffer strips on agricultural land, and potentially facilitated by natural capital revenue, such as nutrient stacking and the establishment of an investment platform. Okay, so that was. I'll open the floor to any questions. Hope that was fast enough, Chair.
I do want to have a proper discussion about this, and I'll open it up for questions, please, to colleagues. Thank you very much, Daniel, for preparing for this.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments, please, on this risk? Councillor Adam, please.
Yeah, thank you. And so I'll kick it off. This sort of is a comment broadly about a lot of our sort of risk management plans. And for this one, it's hard to read the scale or pace of the impact that the risk is speaking about, and then on the other side is to gauge I suppose the scale and the pace and the timeliness of the responses. So I can see on the one side the risk in words, I can see on the other side the actions in words, but I've got no real sense of how quickly these actions are going to mitigate and reduce this risk. And I think we see this broadly elsewhere, but in this example, I don't know how we get that out. I don't know whether Daniel can say a little bit more about when we see this risk being diminished and by what routes. So, and an example might be, I fully understand the potential of the March's environmental investment programme, but I also think, well, if that doesn't have an impact, what is Plan B? So you can see where sort of those questions lie. I wonder if you can sort of pad that out and fill that out a bit for us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Adam. And I would echo Councillor Adam's comments. It's about the sort of I can't say the word specificity, the specificness of the actions and their consequential impact. Really echo Adam's comments.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Councillor Kenny, as well for that question. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I think essentially in terms of that it's the measures we can potentially explore. Do they work, first of all, and if those don't work, what is Plan B? But also actually how we measure, how we prioritise those. and actually then how we fund those projects going forward. And I'm pleased to say we are seeing there's an evolution in this approach across local authorities. I think only this week we were keeping a close eye on some of our neighbouring local authorities who've introduced a nutrient management plan for a SAC river in their catchment. So we are seeing mitigation methods now being requested to apply for planning from NRW, for example, EA. They're now granting planning applications. So we are seeing movement in the market. And actually, if you look at those sites that were blocked due to phosphates, there is definite movement in the market. We are seeing more sites coming forward. And again, I should have said at the start, with our colleagues in the Ballymachanic National Park, for example, the S catchment plan is now published with some evidence on that. There's the wider difficult conversations around some of that diffuse pollution linked to there's agricultural practices at times have been linked, and how we link in with those habitat management schemes to try and address that, and some of that diffuse pollution, as I understand it, in the Upper Wye as well. How do we get to deal with that? But certainly in terms of upgrading, we're looking at case studies across the UK in terms of upgrading private wastewater systems, for example. So there's lots going on. It's a case of identifying what can give us the most impact with the resources we have available. But there's a definite unlocking taking place, we're seeing in some geographies with the mitigation being approved. So we have identified sites for future exploration for that mitigation, and that work is due to be published in the next few weeks.
Yeah, thanks very much. I can see Councillor Jackie, the cabinet member for this one, wants to come in. Jackie.
Very much, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to come in because my role as a cabinet member, I've been sitting on both the boards, the US Catchment Board and the Wye Nutrient Management Board, and a lot of the technical information comes through those boards and then is disseminated. But just to say as well, on a more political note, if you like, we have regular meetings with the Minister, so the Welsh Minister, and there are also, there's been commission meetings with both the English and the Welsh ministers on making sure that we continue to progress this, because at the end of the day, it's not just the economic impact that we have here with the phosphates and other nutrients in our rivers. It's actually the health of those two rivers, and that's a really important issue as far as I'm concerned. Both the partnerships also work closely alongside stakeholders as well, so farming interests and the housing interests as well are both heard on those two nutrient management boards, as well as the communities along those rivers. But it's really important that this goes alongside, so that we recognise the economic challenges that we have here, especially in house building, which is something that we have been lobbying Welsh Government for some time on to give some direction for us and some help, but also to make sure that we understand what the implications are to those two rivers. It's really interesting to see how the two rivers work, or the two nutrient boards work very differently, but at the end of the day, it's the evidence that's important.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Councillor Jackie, for being here to support this item. I think for me going forward, and this is maybe a general comment about our risk deep dives as well as a comment on this one, I think what I'm not seeing, or it's not coming off the page, is the timing of the intervention, the scale of the risk on one side, and the impact of the control measures and interventions on the other, and the extent to which the control measures and the interventions and the responses diminish and address the risk. I've got no reason to believe that the controls and the actions and everything recorded on here isn't an appropriate thing to do. But what I'm missing is the scale of the problem and the impact that the impact that the activity will have on the scale of the problem, the scale of the risk. And therefore it's kind of, for me, it's something about smart interventions and smart objectives and measurable, understandable value for money, value for the economy, value for the environment, specific interventions. That's what I'm kind of I'm kind of missing from this. And then the backdrop to that is also how this relates to the council's risk appetite and risk tolerance when it makes decisions as to which actions and activities it prioritises, and how does it evaluate them for cost-effective expenditure and resource commitment. That's what's in my mind. But I can see Adam also has his hand up again.
No, and I think I'm probably swinging in behind you there, Lynn. Perhaps to give an example, and again, I think the comment is a broader one, not just about the presentation that's in front of us and the risk we're looking at today. And that specificity, isn't it? There you go. That's the word. Isn't
You said it. You were able to say it.
Just because I wrote it out. And that causal link between the two. And an example in this one is understanding around the point source pollution, which is easier to identify and easier to manage. And when does point source pollution, for example, prevent a housing development going forward or a school being built? So it's hard for us to see what the direct impacts are. So I think we broadly get the understanding of the risk from the presentation and the words, or a sense of how much of our risk, our slowed economy, our housing shortage is then linked to the diffuse pollution, which is a much harder one to tackle. And as you say, Jackie, potentially requires political change, leadership, the USC plans, and so on. And so I find as a member of a committee, it's difficult to judge. It's very nice. It's very easy to say this looks and feels like a risk and in the right direction, but actually to have any sort of scrutiny over it is really difficult without the substantive paperwork that I presume sits somewhere that underpins this as one of the top 5 risks to the council. So it's sort of that call for more information. It's difficult to do justice to a deep dive at the end of a committee full stop. And it's difficult to do justice to a deep dive without that sort of substantive information.
Yeah. No, I agree, Adam. It's difficult it's difficult at the closing stages of a meeting, and also without that level of detailed information. Like you, I wouldn't want to say this isn't all in the right direction, but equally the detail isn't there to provide full assurance. I'll bring in Councillor Danny before I bring you back in, Councillor Jackie. And then I think what we'll do, I'll bring in Danny and then I'll give Councillor Jackie and Daniel the last word in response to our thoughts. Danny.
Thank you. Just wondering, are there clear milestones or deadlines set out anywhere, or is it just keep monitoring and report the results as such?
Thank you. Perhaps Councillor Jackie and or Daniel can pick that up as we go. Councillor Jackie.
I'll let Dan pick up on the actual
milestones.
Yeah. I think the point I wanted to make as well is both of the boards, whether it's the USC Catchment or the Nutrient Management Board, the issues are really, really complex, and that's not an excuse I want to make here, but they are really complex, and much of it is out of our hands as a local authority. We have to do work jointly with, as Dan has already said, with the National Park, with Monmouthshire County Council, with Herefordshire County Council as well. So all of those areas are impacted by the phosphates in the river. I think the issue that I have is that Herefordshire seem to be able to build houses where we can't. And that's very much a political drive. We have a moratorium on here in Wales where they don't have the moratorium in Herefordshire. So they're building houses where we're not. And that is a big issue as far as I'm concerned, as a politician, but also as a cabinet member, in understanding where the impacts are on this. So it's a really, really complex area. And I think what I wanted to do really was, the reason I wanted to raise my hand and just speak now, Chair, is because I totally agree with you on the points that you've made. But I don't think we've been able because of the complexities here, we've been able to find a way that we can do that in a meaningful way. And I agree with Councillor Downey, we should have a way of doing this, but I'm not sure we can find a way through that because of the complexities. But perhaps we could jointly somehow figure out what we want as an authority for ourselves and see whether that we can fit that in and come up with something which is meaningful. I still think it would be a struggle, but you know, I'm very happy for Dan to come in and tell me I'm wrong. But having sat on both those nutrient belt boards for 3.5 years now, we rarely get any further forward. It is like treading through treacle all the time. There have been changes made, but they're really difficult boards to actually see where we're actually making improvements, how we're working collaboratively, what impact that's having on the rivers. The rivers are improving, but it's taken a huge amount of work all over the place to actually measure that and provide the evidence. And sometimes it's way behind as well. So some of the evidence you're looking at maybe 2 years down, you know, that there's been done 2 years previously, and by that time it's already out of date. So there's all those issues as well. But if we could find a way forward, I think that would be really useful, because it would make it more powerful when we're talking to ministers.
Thank you, Councillor Jackie. I'm going to give the last word here to Daniel.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And just to really confirm what Councillor Charlton said there, is that the nutrient management plans will have timelines in them. It's what levers we've got as a local authority to influence those. It's diffuse as well, and obviously some of those policies coming from UK Welsh Government as well have interactions in terms of the levers and the enablers that we have access to. But no, that it's a fair point really. It's something that nutrient management plan will give us that timeline.
Daniel, final question from me and Councillor Jackie. When would be a good time for this committee to have another deep dive on this risk at a point where you could provide a greater level of detail?
As I understand, the nutrient management plan is due to release shortly for the Y, so that will give us the timelines around that. So I'd certainly say within the next 6 months we would be in a position to be able to produce that, those KPIs.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Daniel, Councillor Jackie. I think that's what we'll do, Carrie Ann, if we could put this back on.
Could I just say that there will be 2 nutrient management plans. One will be for the USC and one will be for the Y, and they're separate. So the USC is purely in Wales, but the Y is in Wales and England. So that you have that. That's what I'm saying. There's an added complexity there. I also know that the USC Catchment Board are now starting to work at pace. They've had a bit of a gap. They've had a changeover of personnel through the Catchment Board and haven't met recently. So I'm with Daniel on this. We will be able to do that, but I think it might be worth going away and perhaps reporting back to you at the next governance and audit about what we see as the timeline.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the timeline can be done via Carrie Ann and Kath, and we can schedule another deep dive in for sort of 6 to 9 months time. Which would be good. But in the meantime, thank you very much, both of you, and complex area. Thank you very much. We need to move on, I'm afraid. And agenda item 15, just a couple of updates from working groups. The internal audit working group met week before last, or last week possibly. We already referred to the progress that had been made in the aged outstanding recommendations work, and we also received a really helpful update on the Montgomery Canal Shared Prosperity Fund project. And I'm going to ask Kath to give us an update on the action following the last capital working group. Kath.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. In the absence of Gareth Hall, who chairs the Capital Working Group, just a quick update regarding the report that was brought to Governance and Audit Committee regarding the farms. That report will be going to Cabinet, as said at the last meeting, with the Royal Enterprise Policy report. I'm aware that that is now scheduled for January. I think when it was initially discussed, they were hoping December, but that's now scheduled for January. And I know there is a deadline for that report to go by the end of February. So as soon as that's scheduled, that report will be going to Cabinet, and the chair of the Capital Working Group will be invited to present.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Kath, for that. I mean, I think what we're just keen to know that the report goes into the process at the right and most appropriate time. So thank you for that. Councillor Adam?
Yeah, it's just so I sit as a member on the Farmer State Advisory Group, and there was mentioning some of the paperwork about that the comments from the Capital Working Group being shared with the Farmer State Advisory Group, because obviously it's good if the left hand can see what the right hand is thinking. And I don't think that happened at the recent Farmer State Advisory Group. I'm not aware that the chair of that group has seen the comments from.
We haven't been asked to share. We haven't had a request for that report, but as soon as we do, we can share that, because I think that's what the leader was asking at the last GAC committee.
At the last meeting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a comment from the leader.
Yeah.
How is that enacted?
I haven't asked to forward that report on, but it's a public report. It was in the GAC minutes, so yeah, we can forward that on to the next one. Absolutely fine, Councillor Kennelly.
Yeah, if that could be done, that'd be great, because again, it's about the timeliness of everybody seeing the thought processes going on, and that timeliness. And whilst it is a public thing, it's not always the case that every member sees every paper that goes through every committee. So a bit of proactive pushing it along would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. That can happen. Thank you very much, Kath, and thanks, Councillor Adam. Agenda item 16. Just a couple of comments on the draft agenda for January 2026. From me, value for money report. I think I'd like assurance that it will definitely be in January, or perhaps my last conversation with the Section 151 officer was that she really wanted to do quite a detailed piece of work on that, and I think I'd rather it came later and with confidence rather than got pushed back again from January. So perhaps, Mary, if you could just take that away and discuss with Jane, and if January is going to be good, great, but if there's any doubt, I think I would rather it was postponed, and that when it was on the forward work plan, we were really confident that it was going to come. And I believe Gareth from Audit Wales, are there a couple of Audit Wales changes potentially to that schedule?
Yes, Chair. The audit plan will come later on in the spring, and as outlined earlier, the Capital National Report will not be published until December, and we need to allow officers the opportunity to develop their management response form. So I'd like to request a delay to both of those papers, if that's possible.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. And Kath, your hand?
Yes, Chair, just to confirm, as earlier discussed, that the whistleblowing report is now on the forward work programme for January for 23-24, 24-25, as the monitoring officer said, and we've also added to the forward work programme for an annual report on, or an annual review of the policy, as well as the annual report for whistleblowing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kath, for that clarification. Thank you. I'm going to move us swiftly on, and hopefully people can bear with us for another 10 minutes or so. Exempt item, item 17 is the committee is asked to consider the motion for exemption, and I will need to have someone to move and second that proposal, please.
Move.
John's moved it. Someone to second.
Happy to
please.
second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Danny. If we could move into confidential session now, please.
Sorry, Chair, need a vote as well, please.
Need a vote.
What? Sorry, I forgot. And a proper vote after the moving. Sorry, thanks, Clive. There's always something I forget. Thank you. And so we've voted and we're okay to move into closed session.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move us across now.
Thank you. Thanks for rescuing me, Clive.